In today's video, we'll learn about the very interesting story of how Mount Everest was named. Now, I'm sure everyone has heard of Mount Everest. It is the tallest mountain in the world with a height of 8,848 meters above sea level. That's more than 29,000 feet. Mount Everest, if you are not aware of who it is named after, you would assume it is someone named Everest, and he must have been the person who either discovered it, understood the height of the mountain, glimpsed it, or was the boss of the expedition that led to the discovery of Mount Everest. But none of these factors are true. Still, Mount Everest is named after Everest. Who is this Everest person? This person is Sir George Everest, who was born in Wales on 4th July in 1790. He attended military schools in England before spending much of his adult life in India. Now, I'm sure it is not a surprise for my viewers that the British did spend a lot of time in India. After working for the East India Company, Sir George Everest joined the Great Trigonometrical Survey in 1818 and spent 25 years on the project, working his way up to superintendent in 1823 and then surveyor-general of India in 1830. This answers a very important question, in my mind at least. What is the utility of trigonometry? Trigonometry, I have now learned, can be used for measuring the height of mountains. Jokes aside, this survey was aiming to understand the heights of the Himalayan peaks. Sir George Everest was involved in the expedition of mapping out the heights of various Himalayan peaks. So, why would I say that Sir George Everest was not involved in mapping the height of Everest? Because Everest was discovered by the British Great Trigonometrical Survey in 1852, and Sir George Everest retired and returned to Great Britain in 1843, 9 years before the discovery of Everest. So, why was it named after Sir George Everest? Because his successor, Sir Andrew Waugh, felt it appropriate to name Mount Everest after Sir George Everest, his predecessor. What was his reasoning? The reason he gave was, and I quote, "I was taught by my respected chief and predecessor, Colonel Sir George Everest, to assign to every geographical object its true local or native appellation. But here is a mountain, most probably the highest in the world, without any local name that we can discover, whose native appellation, if it has any, will not very likely be ascertained before we are allowed to penetrate into Nepal." This is what Sir Andrew Waugh wrote to the Royal Geographical Society in 1856. Sir George Everest protested. He said he did not want the mountain to be named after him, not just because he had no contribution towards mapping its height, but also because his name would be very difficult to pronounce for the locals. We pronounce it Everest, but I believe Sir George Everest pronounced his own surname as Everest. So, despite his protests, the Royal Geographical Society in 1865 decided to dub the world's tallest peak Mount Everest anyway. Sir George Everest died as a 76-year-old in December 1866, and we don't know whether he ever got a chance to get a glimpse of the mountain named after him. I hope you liked listening to this story. The first time I had heard about it was in a Bengali novel. I forget who was the author. Either it was Satyajit Ray or Sunil Gangopadhyay. And I was familiar with this story, but I really needed to get all the names right and present before you. I hope you enjoyed this, and thank you for watching this video. Take care, bye bye, and please don't forget to be awesome.